Hi, I'm Miriam from Pakistan. Please like and subscribe to the channel. In my family, I was a beloved and long-awaited child. When I was born, my dad climbed the tallest building in the city to set off some fireworks. He just idolized my mom, who gave him this gift, his adorable daughter. And he felt like the happiest father in the world. Mom worked as a flight attendant and was rarely home. Therefore, my dad was doing all the housekeeping and raising me. And he was as good at it as my mom was at making money. It seemed that nothing could destroy our family paradise, where everyone liked everything. But one day my mom didn't come back from a flight. Her plane disappeared from the radar and she was never found. Dad told me that Mom survived and now lived on a desert island, and someday we'd definitely see her again. I sincerely believed him and imagined our future meeting with her. But in the meantime, life went on, and since my mom used to provide for the family, my dad and I had to do something urgently. So we moved to another city where Dad got a job as a butler in a luxurious mansion owned by a local banker. Oh, we never even dreamed of the fabulous luxury in which this house residents lived. Even the small room which my dad and I occupied was very cozy and tastefully furnished. One day I was walking in the garden and admiring the picturesque view. Suddenly I heard a scream, a girl my age caught on the railing of a balcony on the second floor and hanging in the air and calling for help. Not wasting a second, I grabbed the bouncy castle that was on the playground and put it in the place where the girl was supposed to land after the fall. And I made it in time. One more minute and the girl would have been gone for good. Her name, by the way, was Amina. And after the fall, she silently looked at me for a minute and was convulsively breathing. And then we started laughing hysterically at the same time. Recovering her breath, she said, "If it wasn't for you, I bet I would really have felt that fall. You're my guardian angel," Amina said heartily. At that moment, Mr. Khan approached us, the banker who owned the house. Amina was his daughter, and he was terribly scared when he realized that this story could have ended so badly. So he spoke with Amina quite strictly. "You'll always getting into trouble. Baby, it's time to grow up. What if Miriam wasn't around? I'm very glad that such a reasonable girl appeared in your life. You have a lot to learn from her," Mr. Khan said instructively. At that moment, Amina's face darkened and something evil flashed in her eyes. But she seemed to suppress these fleeting feelings, smiled at me, and thanked me again for saving her. And then she invited me to her room to show her outfit collection. You should have seen those clothes. Haute couture dresses, blouses, and trousers seemed to come alive from fashion magazines. And since Amina and I had the same constitution, that day I tried everything on and felt like a goddess. We turned on the music, did each other's makeup, and had a real fashion show. And then we spent a lot of time in front of the mirror, holding hands and dancing in our luxurious outfits. Closer to the evening, Amina said that she wanted to give me a present, and she let me stay in the stunning dress I tried on last. "Miriam, that dress looks great on you. You just keep it. I want to repay you for everything you did for me today," Amina said with a smile. At first I refused. How could I accept such an expensive gift, which cost more than my dad was making in a year? But seeing Amina's persistence and unwillingness to hear a negative answer, I gave up and went to my place in a new outfit. But imagine my shock when 5 minutes after I got to my room, I heard a loud knock, and then Mr. Khan and a crying Amina entered. "Dad, look, this girl stole my favorite dress. A gift you brought back from your trip to Italy. It looks like we let a thief into our home," the owner's daughter, chipper, sobbing, carefully watching her father's reaction. I rightfully protested and said that Amina had given me the dress as a thank you gift for saving her. In response, she called me a vile liar. Mr. Khan took a neutral stance and answered his daughter very softly. "Baby, Miriam deserves such a gift today. Let's leave this dress to her, and I'll get you a new one so you don't get upset over these little things," he said. After Mr. Khan left the room, Amina smiled smugly. "You should know that this is just the beginning. I want you to know your place and also learn to never show off how great you are in front of my father. Remember, I'm his daughter, so I'll always be the best for him," Amina hissed. And at that moment, it seemed to me that a forked snake tongue showed from her mouth. Gee, it was weird. In fact, Amina's threats didn't scare me at all. I was happy that my dad found a decent job, and since my mom disappeared, he finally began to bounce back. I helped him with chores around the house, and in my free time, I studied research on the superpowers of the human brain and looked through the anatomical atlases that I took from the city library. Perhaps this is what interested and pleased me more than anything in the world. One day, when I was sitting in the gazebo and reading my books, Mr. Khan approached me. He was impressed with my studies and asked me a few questions. My knowledge in the field of natural sciences shocked him so much that he convinced my dad to send me to a private school where Amina studied, and personally paid for my education. According to him, this school would help all my talents shine. Indeed, my performance exceeded all expectations, and in a few months, I became the best in the class. The teachers called me a genius girl, and my biology project, for which I spent 2 weeks building a human out of cardboard boxes, won a science competition. It seemed that Mr. Khan was more proud of me than my own dad. He started buying me magazines and books and taking me to scientific conferences and exhibitions. We could spend hours discussing ideas for my projects. When Amina noticed such attention and kindness towards me from her father, she turned green, just like a big, nasty toad. Then one day I found my cardboard human torn to shreds. Amina was happily rubbing her hands but said that it was the cat. It was absolutely clear to me that the owner's daughter was lying and that she ruined my project. I was terribly upset, but Mr. Khan helped me restore and glue the model back together. But Amina didn't stop there. Once I decided to take a bath, so I filled the tub with water, and at that moment, the owner's daughter called me. I remember turning off the tap and hurrying to Amina's room. It was a real mess. She smeared the curtains and light-colored furniture with tomato juice, and in a raised voice told me to quickly clean it up. I took a deep breath and got to work, but after a while I heard screams and water splashing. Running out of Amina's room, I found myself ankle-deep in water. The whole house was panicking. The staff was trying to save expensive interior items. The owner's daughter said I didn't turn off the water and purposely caused the flood, and that was one of her lies. Later, it turned out that the damage from the flood amounted to several $1,000,000. Vintage furniture made from rare wood and an old piano were damaged. My dad wouldn't be able to pay it off until the end of his days, and Amina sarcastically offered me to sell my kidney. Mr. Khan didn't lose his temper and didn't present my father with the bill. He called the construction team and paid for the work out of his own pocket. Dad gave me the scolding of a century. He yelled like crazy and told me to get my act together. Amina, who was standing at a distance, watched this terrible scene, and judging by the expression on her face, she felt incomparable pleasure. At that moment, I realized how crazy the owner's daughter was. Therefore, I began to avoid Mr. Khan, not to provoke this crazy girl anymore. The years went by quickly. Dad and I got used to the fact that Mom wouldn't come back, and we learned to live with it. In senior classes, the boys wouldn't leave me alone and were asking me out on dates, but none of them could win my heart. In addition, I was most interested in studying, which I was focused on. So all evening long, I would sit in the school library and read academic literature. By that time, Amina had been dating the son of the richest businessman in the city for several years. She finally forgot about my existence and left my dad and me alone. Once I was crossing the road on my way from school. Suddenly, an expensive sports car appeared around the corner. It was flying towards me at high speed. I was so struck that I froze in anticipation of the inevitable collision. The car braked hard and stopped literally a centimeter away from my body. A young man handsome as a god got out of the car. He smugly asked if it was all right and offered money for moral damages. I threw the bundle of banknotes on the hood of the car, kicked the wheel really hard, called the guy a psycho, and proudly went away. Imagine my surprise when I saw a familiar car parked near Mr. Khan's mansion. And when I entered the house, I wanted to fall through the ground. The owner was hugging that arrogant guy who turned out to be his son, Adam. He studied abroad for many years, recently got his diploma, and returned to visit his father. Mr. Khan introduced his son to me, and I blushed to the tips of my ears and muttered something incoherent. I was so ashamed of my behavior that I began to avoid Adam, and he began to throw himself in my way and talk to my dad a lot, which really made me mad. In honor of her brother's return, Amina invited her friends and threw a lavish party where I was serving drinks and snacks. I tried so hard not to catch Adam's eye that I looked around more than where I was going. So it's not surprising that I stumbled, fell, and dumped a tray of food on the floor. And I hit my leg really hard. The owner's daughter and her friends started laughing at me. "Look at this chicken! What a miserable and ridiculous creature lives in our house!" Amina laughed loudly. And I felt ready to burn with shame and emotional pain. At this time, Adam came up to me. He helped me up, took off the food remains from my clothes, and took me to his room, where he put a cold compress on my leg. His warm hands and caring touch made my heart beat faster. When he walked me to my room and wished me good night, I realized that what I had been waiting for so long had happened. I'd finally fallen in love. And the most amazing thing was that Adam felt the same way. The next day he asked me out on a date, and we watched the dawn from the roof of a building. It was so romantic. And then he kissed me gently, and my feelings took me to another dimension. When we returned home in the evening, I saw that the door to Amina's room was ajar. Most likely she knew about my date with Adam, but I didn't worry about it. As it turned out, I should have. The next night, I started to panic when Dad didn't come home for a long time. He left to run some errands for Mr. Khan and should have been home by then. When I was restlessly walking around the room, Amina entered. Her predatory smile made it clear that she knew where my dad was. "You're trying to steal my family, you pathetic beggar. First you bewitched my father and now my brother. You're a witch. But I want you to know how it feels to be afraid of losing someone. Pack your things and get out. If you don't leave, you'll never see your daddy again." Amina threatened me. Since I already knew how crazy she was, I agreed to everything. After some time, Dad returned, all beaten and in torn clothes. I cried, hugged him tightly, and told him everything. Dad understood. In a matter of minutes, he packed his things, and on the very first flight, we flew to another city. There, my dad easily found an excellent job as a maitre d' in an expensive restaurant. And I got an after-school job as a care worker and entered a medical university. Dad and I were doing pretty well, and the time of my studies passed by quickly. I got my honors diploma, successfully completed my internship, and started my medical practice in a maternity hospital. Once an ambulance brought in a girl who was giving birth and needed surgery urgently, and I saw a familiar face. It was Amina. She gave birth to twins, and for 24 hours we fought for her life and the lives of her babies. And when she woke up, she recognized me and started crying. "Miriam, please forgive me. Once I tried to ruin your life, so fate punished me. I ran away from home because I fell in love with a man and got pregnant. And he turned out to be married. And all this time I lived on the street begging for money because I was ashamed to return to my dad so miserable and abandoned," Amina said with pain. And she also told me something that explained a lot about her behavior. It turned out that Amina was Mr. Khan's adoptive daughter, so she was very jealous of her father. I advised Amina to calm down and said that everything was fine, and I called Mr. Khan, who together with Adam flew in from another city in just a few hours. They were so happy to see Amina alive, and Mr. Khan didn't leave his grandchildren for a moment. And in the meantime, Adam came up to me and told me that he'd been looking for me all this time, and stumblingly asked if I had a boyfriend, and I said no. "Miriam, then we should pick up where we left off," he said in a gentle voice, and our lips met in the sweetest kiss.